Hey, people. I don't know what to call you. Daniel here, TA. Looking at the crash course, I decided to just make a YouTube video of it in case, people, that way people can watch it on their own time. And then you can ask me questions in the Slack or ask Brennan or Sean or Fernando questions about it. But an additional resource is just me going over the um, the crash course. Again, if you want to type along to watch this is in Project 7. Um, Additional resources, and then you have a crash course here, and then I'm looking at the unsolved script here. So we're just going to talk about some basic JavaScript fundamentals to go over. All right, so first thing, create a basic variable. Basic variables, we've learned now 3 ways to do variables. Before we were doing var, so if I said var name Daniel, you do something like that. You could have, so that'd be a string, say var age equals 4, that'd be a number. You could have a lot of things. You could have it be a object, you could have it be an array. And now we're learning that there are 2 other ways to kind of declare variables. One would be like let. So let, and maybe you have um, let employed equal false, right? So again, employed, I don't know, did I spell that right? I don't know if I did or not. Let is kind of like var, but there's a scope difference. I forget the main difference. I know the differences in scope, um, function scope, and I think global scope. But either way, let is going to be when something is going to change. So hopefully, here's a Boolean. Hopefully, that eventually will change to true, right? So let is when you sort of like var. There's a difference in scope, but we tend to use let more now. You'll see us using var less and less. And let is again something that's going to change. So like if you're doing a for loop, I would probably use let. The third way to do a variable is const. So const is going to usually be like a variable that will not change. It's constant. It's not going to change. So maybe last name Vega. My last name is not going to change. It should not change. It should say that. That'd be a constant. My age, right? Age. If I had age here, that would definitely not be a constant because that will change. As we get older. So const, let, and var are the ways that you can declare variables. Okay. Arrays. Arrays. How do we create an array of 5 strings? So an array, you could again use let or var if you want, or const depending on it. But usually I'd think about using let. An array of 5 strings. I'll call this names. A lot of times arrays are given plural names. You call it whatever you want there, depending on what it represents. But maybe I have here's an array of 5 names. Adam, Billy, Chris, Diana, and Eric. So 5 names. Arrays are going to be in the brackets. Usually, I think an array should be. I don't know if they can be different data types, but I think they should be the same data type. Kind of like a list. An array is like a list. So names, anything like that. You could have say let animals. That's also a common one for examples. Animals can be like, I don't know, dog, cat, lizard, what, fish, something like that. So there's an array of strings. You can create arrays of anything, or you can create arrays of objects, of numbers, of booleans, of whatever. But you can also do numbers. So let's see, let ages. I'll say jersey numbers. And again, same syntax. You're gonna have to use open close brackets, and then you're going to pass the numbers there. So let's say 6, 10. I think Bosch was 10. I don't know about that. Was Wade 4 or 7? I don't remember. 23, 24. Oh, I should have done 8 here. These are basketball numbers if you're a basketball fan. And I'll do 32. That's Shaq. And then Elijah on 34. So something like that, right? Those are some array of numbers. You can, while we're thinking of arrays, you can change arrays. There's a lot of methods to know about arrays. Maybe for you to write down in your notes, just know push, not that, sorry. Push, if you're going to do a push, that's to add values to an array. So maybe you have this jersey numbers array, and I want to add another jersey number. So jersey numbers dot push, and I can add like 45. Right? So that would add 45 to the end of this array. There's push. There's other methods you might want to know. Join. I mean, you should look up array methods. I mean, I'm not going to get to all the array methods, but just keep in mind when you think about arrays, Google array methods to get more things you can do to arrays. Okay, for loops. For loops. So they always start with for. There's a couple different types of for loops. There's for loops, there's for each loops, there's for of, for in. But the typical for loop starts with a for, and then you have in parentheses 3 things. You have some initialization phase. So a lot of times we were doing var I equals 0 if we're going to loop through an array. Now I'd probably do let I equals 0 because usually a for loop is you're looping through some data structure like an array where you would traverse it. So you start at 0. You might start at 0. You can start at the end too. Start at 0, and you can do something a certain amount of times. So here it says create a loop that loops through and prints my name is Bob 5 times. I think they want to print out my name is Bob 5 times. I don't know if they want to print out my name is Bob 5 times. So if we start at 0, you can say I is less than 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 times. And then I plus plus. And what this is doing, so it starts off by initializing some variable, commonly I. You could call it anything, commonly I. So I is 0, and then it checks a condition. It says, is I less than 5? Is 0 less than 5? If it is, I'm going to do whatever is in these curly braces, which in this case would be log my name is Bob. So it says I is 0. Is 0 less than 5? Yes. So I'm going to console log this. So it'll do what's in the curly braces, and then it will increment or decrement your variable. So here I plus plus means add 1 to I. So whatever I was, if you're 0, add 1 to that, it becomes, it becomes 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. And then it goes back and it checks this. So again, I want to make it as clear as possible. I can use some arrows here. So let's see if I can do this. Okay. So again, first starts off here. I is 0. Then it goes here. Checks it. If this is true, I do this. It is true. So then I console log Bob, and then I add 1 to I. All right. I can also do this. Let me keep further track. So at first I is 0. Then I do some code. Right? I is 0, console log Bob, I plus plus. So then what does I become? I is no longer 0, I is now 1. It checks here, is 1 less than 5? Yes. So I'm going to console log my name is Bob again. And then I'm going to add 1 to I again. So then we add 1 to I. I is 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes. So we're going to console log again. And then we're going to add 1 to I again. So we keep adding. I is 3. 3 is less than 5. Add it again. 4. 4 is less than 5. Console log Bob. Add again. I is 5. Is 5 less than 5? No. 5 is equal to 5, but it's not less than 5. So at that point, the loop is over because the conditional here, we stop whenever this is false. Whenever that's false, we stop the loop. So that would do it 5 times. That would console log Bob 5 times. Right? So that's a very typical for loop. It's you can control how much you want. You can start wherever you want. You don't have to start at 0. You could start at 6, and you could go for as long as 6 is greater, or as long as I is greater than 0. You could go this and count backwards, right? I minus minus, and that would only do it 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It would do it 6 times in that case. So for loops like this, You can go up, you can go down, you could add 2 each time. I plus equal 2, or I actually minus equal 2, would subtract 2 each time. So it'd be 6, 4, 2, so I do it 3 times. You can do for loops a lot of different ways. Create a for loop that loops through your 5 string array. So again, let's move this name down here. I'm just gonna copy it. So if I wanted to loop through this string, this array of strings, this array of strings. So I want to loop through that. I can do it a couple ways. Actually, since if you're watching this, let me make my screen a little bigger. Let me know. You can let me know later if this is hard to read or something. And let me get rid of my. So I have this array of strings, these names, and I could do this a couple ways. I could say for, again, let I equal 0. We're starting at the beginning. And again, we could call I anything we want, but I is usually short for index. It's convention. We use I. I need I to be less than. Now I could count my array. I have 5 items in my array, so I could say I is less than 5 if I wanted to, because again, when we're thinking about arrays and we think of the indexes here, the first element is at index 0, and then next one's at 1, next one's at 2, and then 3, and then 4, right? The length here, names.length is equal to 5. The length is 5, but the indices of the elements in the array start at 0 and go to the length minus 1. So whatever the length is, the last element in the array is going to be the length minus 1. So I could, in my for loop, say I start at 0, I is less than 5. But what if I add a name to it? What if I add, Frank, and then I add George or whatever? I don't know how long the array is, so it's best to do I is less than or equal to names, whatever your array is, dot length. Because it's less than, you don't have to worry about the fact that, again, the length of the array is actually 1 more than the last index. So because you're using strictly less than. If you did less than or equal to, you would have to do names.length minus 1, but we don't do that. And then if you're counting up, you need it to do I++, which again, that's just add 1 to I. And what we do here is just console log names at I. So names at 0 at first, it's console log Adam, then we add 1 to I, so I would be now 1. So it's console log names at 1, which is Billy, we add 1 to I, console log Chris, Diana, Eric, and then if we add 1 to I would be 5. 5 would no longer be less than 5, so it would stop. So that would be a for loop there. Now, there is a for each loop, which is another type of for loop. This will do the same thing. So if I know I'm going to look at every single thing in an array, I know I'm not going to skip, I'm not going to go halfway or stop at any point. I'm definitely going to look at every single thing in an array. I could do this, do names, so the array, and then do a for each loop, which is similar to a for loop, like the one we have on line 49. So we do names dot for each, and then in the parentheses, we give it a callback function, a function to do on every name. So I could say function here, and then in curly braces have some function. And in the function, I need to tell JavaScript what to call each thing in here. And I could call it whatever I want. Typically, the convention is that if this is names, we're going to say do something with name. So here we say log name. So, and the way the syntax normally works is like a for each. So like I'll write this. That's how I'd say it. For each name in names. That's why it's a for each. So for each name in names, console log the name. This would again print out every single thing in the array. You can call this name whatever you want. You could say names.for each, and then in a function you can call this banana and console log banana, this would work fine. It'd be the same thing. It just makes more sense that if you call your array a plural version, then in your for each loop, you just use this singular version because that just makes sense. You can say it out loud. For each name in names, do something, right? And this callback function here, you could also, now that we know this, you can also pass in a arrow function, right? ES6. You could say name, and then you could log console log name. Too much. You do this. That would also work too. You could also notice, remember ES, that arrow function. I don't have to have the parentheses around name because there's only one parameter there, one argument you pass. Do that on one line, but that's the for each loop. Same thing. This does the exact same thing as this. Okay. Okay. Functions. Create a function that takes two numbers and divides the first number by the second. Then call that function. So functions. You can call functions a lot of ways. You could say let I'll say division, whatever you want to call this. Let divides equal a function. This is a function. Set that to be a function where I take, and then in parentheses here you put the two parameters you want. For this function to work, you need to tell me two numbers. So I'm saying num1, num2. Those are two things I need to know to do the thing you want. And create a function that takes two numbers and divides the first number by the second. So I'm probably going to return that. You give me two numbers, num1, num2, and I'm going to give you, I return back to you the first number divided by a second. So just return num1 divided by num2. And that'd be divides. You'd call it like this. You could say console log divides, and let's do like 25 comma 5, right? That would log out 5, right? Because 25 divided by 5 like that. You can do this a couple ways. You could in your function say like let quotient equal 0, and then, or you could say let quotient equal num1 divided by num2, and then you could return quotient if you wanted to. Maybe that would depending on your style, your syntax, your flavor, you can spice it how you like. There is an easy ability to reading this code. You declare a variable like quotient. If anyone read that code, they'd be like, oh, quotient, I understand math, I know what you're doing, I know this function does. I don't think you need to do it here because you called your function divide, so I think it's obvious what it does, so you don't have to do that. Another way to do functions, we have arrow functions. So you could also say let divides equal, and then here just num1, num2. You don't have the keyword function now, but now you have your arrow. And then this is returning something, so I could just say num1 divided by num2. Right? This would do the exact same thing as this. I'll say divide arrow. I'll call it like that. And you would do the same thing. Say log divide arrow. Right? Let's do again 25, 5. This would be the exact same thing. But this function is a little bit quicker. The arrow function, again, you don't have to write the keyword function. You just have the arrow. Since we have two arguments here, I do need to have the parentheses. And then I'm just returning something, one line. I don't have to write the keyword return like I have here, which is all one line. You notice return that. I could have the write the return word. I could have it in like this. I could say return like that if I wanted to with the arrow function. You don't have to. Right? If you're returning something, it's one line. Just use that. It's implied. The implicit return. So yeah, functions. Writing some functions like that. Create a function that takes an array of numbers and then loops through the array and prints out numbers. Then call the function. So here we go. Let's do an arrow function. Well, I do that mostly. So I could call it a const because the function is not going to change. It's always going to be this function. I'll call this print array, and it's going to take an array, and I might call it R, arrow function, right? So R, and then I'm going to loop through something. So you're going to pass me an array, I'm going to loop through it. So let's just do, basically, you could do either one of these for loops. For simplicity, I'm going to do a for each loop. Let me say the R you pass, the array you pass into it, which I call R, for each. What I'm going to do for each in that, well, for each element, I'm going to console log it, prints out the numbers, and the log the element. That's really all it is, right? Print array, you give me an array. Again, this is an arrow function, so I don't need to have the parentheses or say the word function. You pass in an array as an argument, and then for each, I will console log that element. Now, because I called this array just R, or short for array, I don't really know what to call this. Like we had the name and names type of connection here. I don't know. So I'm just gonna call it element. You call it whatever you want. You could call it, I don't know what you want to call it. Whatever. Element to me makes the most sense. And then you could just call this like print array, and then again, let's pass in. Here, I got this one here. Copy that. Right. So if I had this, I would say print array Jersey numbers, right? And that would, you're passing this whole array into this function print array, and then it runs the for each loop on that array and console logs those elements. So I stressed earlier that I think an array should be like a list of the same data type, either all strings, all numbers. They represent many things that are all the same, like names or something like that. An object is going to be a way to represent one thing that has different attributes about it. That might be different data types. So instead of all being strings or all being numbers, you can have a string, a number, multiple strings, you got another array in there. So what if I said, let's the classic one would be something like let car equal, and then an object is going to have these curly braces, and you're going to have these key pairs where you have some an attribute and then the value. So a car, what would you describe a car on? So you might have like the make, then you have a colon, and you have then a string, like Toyota, right? That's the make here. And then in the key, if it's one word, you don't have to have quotes. If it's two words, you have to have quotes. So if you said like, if you wanted this to be like car maker, right? You'd have to have that in the quotes. I just like to, usually if I can, make my attributes be one word, or you could do camel car make if you want to like that. So you could have a string for the make. You could have a number for the year. So maybe like a 2017 or something like that. You could have like MPG. I don't know, miles per gallon. What's gonna, I don't know, 27. I don't know, make it up. You could have like drivers, right? Maybe you have a drivers, and maybe you have a list of drivers. So here you have an array of names. So who can drive? Who can drive my car? Sean can drive the car, and Ando, and Brennan. Not Calvin. No, Calvin can't drive my car. He knows what he did. So you have anything that, again, anything that would represent or describe this car object that you want to make sense of. So the make, year, MPG, drivers, is clean, right? That could be a Boolean. False, it's not clean, I need a car wash, something like that, right? And there is an object. How do you get access to these values? You get access by a couple things. So you can get access using dot notation. So car.make. What is the car.make? And you could print that out. You could do car.year if you want to. If you want to know all the drivers, car.drivers if you wanted to. Car.drivers. Do something like that. You can also do it without dot notation. You can do car mpg with this bracket notation. It kind of looks like an array. You can do it like that too, which is nice because you can pass a variable. You can like pass in um, x here, car x. If you before set like say let x equal is clean, then you could pass x here, right? Sorry. Then you could pass x here, and this would return, right? That would be false, right? Car of x in this like kind of bracket syntax, you'd be false. You could not say let x equal is clean and do car dot x. That would not work. You'd have to do bracket notation, right? If you want to pass a variable in there, I usually would just do this, usually dot notation with objects. And you can have arrays. You can have arrays of objects. So let's just copy this. I'm gonna copy that, and let's see. Let cars equal, and here's an array, right? And pass in. Actually, I'll pass in. Let's say, and I'm gonna have all these objects just separated by a comma. Separated by a comma, and let's see. Well, this is all right. So this Toyota, this is going to be a Honda. This maybe be a 2016. It's going to get 30 miles, and you could change whatever you want. Calvin, let's see, Alex, let's see, Joey. And this car here is a Ford. This is a 1964. So it gets, let's see, 11 miles per gallon. I don't know who's driving this. This change has feature, and you get what I'm saying. You could have. I'm not keep going for time's sake, but you could have an array of objects, and then if you wanted to get the properties of it, so say I want to get the make of the first car. That would be cars at 0. That's the first car there, and dot make. Right, that would get you the make here. There'd be a Toyota. If I do cars at 1, that would be getting at the Honda, right? Because this is again 0 index place, first index place, and so on. Last thing, jQuery events. Create a basic HTML button and then create an on-click. So jQuery, always good to remember. $sign is usually the way you use for jQuery. If I were to create something, $sign and then in parentheses and then in quotes. If you want to create an element, you have to do the less than greater than sign. And this, if I want to make a button, there we go. There's a not cap, sorry, button like that. Or you can make a div or H1, whatever like that. Here's a button. And we want to create an on-click event. So on-click. So create the button, then on-click, and event that triggers in a click event. So on-click, then do some function, right? Do something like this. Arrow function, let's say log clicks. Log like that. So that'd be one way to use jQuery. I think jQuery does have. I feel like I should double check this. Again, I always forget. jQuery does have an on click. I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head. They have a click. I always forget. That's the click one. Sorry, not on click. I think they have a click method and they have an on method. Right? It's just click. Good thing I checked. Again, you're not going to memorize everything, but that's why you can look up stuff. So they have an on and they have a click. So not on click, excuse me, just click. Or you can make, you could do it again by thinking like this. You could also say on, and then here you pass 2 parameters. And so on click, do something like that. So the click function or the on function. On function would, you can do on click or on submission or on a lot of things like that, right? So like that. Again, with the on, where you have on and then the type of event and then the callback function, which you could write with regular function syntax, or you can do an arrow function, right? So again, some sort of event, which could be a lot of different things. Yeah, so two different ways. Oh man, 30 minutes, long video. Sorry I took so long. But if you have any questions, let me know in Slack, and maybe I can cover that more. I can make videos pretty easily, so if you have other videos, other questions you want, let me know, and I can make videos for that. Cool. I'll see you guys in class. Have a good one.